Our next speaker is Dr. Friederike Ernst. She's the Secretary General of the Blockchain Bundesverband, the German Association for Blockchain. Now, she's a physicist by training, but has had an interest in blockchain from day one. Now, she has a startup for blockchain infrastructure and is one of the founders of the German Association for Blockchain. And she's going to tell us today how blockchains can be facilitators for platforms. And I'm super excited to listen to her. I hope you are too. Please welcome to the stage with me today, Friederike Ernst. Thank you for joining us.
Can you hear me? OK, now. Fantastic. Great. So I'm here with two hats today. One hat is the Blockchain Bundesverband, which we founded just about a year ago, June of last year. So it was founded out of the midst of the German blockchain startups. We have 33 founding members, and an equal number of members have joined since. These are some of our founding members. So what's our core mission? So basically, blockchain is a somewhat unregulated or under-regulated area when speaking to lawyers and the government as well. So there's a lot of legal and regulatory uncertainty in the space. And it's really difficult to actually get good answers from people in power here in Germany. So basically, there are three things that we're actually pushing forward. The first thing being legal and regulatory clarity. So how are the existing regulations applied to blockchain, and can we push for sensible, good new regulations? To this end, we actually have a political committee at the Blockchain Association of Germany. It has all the leading digital politicians from all parties, and we're discussing with them on a very regular basis what needs to be done, and this gets put into action. The other two things that we are pushing for are first APIs for databases that are compatible with blockchain, and the second thing is a blockchain identity to make interacting with these state-owned databases possible. There are plenty of identity providers on the blockchain, but for these use cases, we're really looking for some sort of state backup. OK, so what I'm here to talk about mostly today is blockchains in their role of a herald for platforms. So platforms are going to be one of the prime use cases for blockchains. So why is that so? Blockchains enable an infrastructure that doesn't really belong to anyone. And things that don't belong to anyone belong to everyone. Why is that so? So the infrastructure, the rules of the infrastructure, how the infrastructure is administered, is hard-coded into the application itself. So anyone can check it, and no one can change it. Sometimes it's possible to actually change the rules, but it has to be hard-coded into the system how this change is actually accomplished and who can do this. And this is all laid out from day one. So anyone who actually joins a platform, anyone who joins a blockchain infrastructure knows exactly what they're getting into. Why is this so crucial? This enables cooperation between competitors. So I'll give you a very real example. So imagine you're calling a taxi. So if you're like me, then you'll have a lot of apps that can do that for you on your phone, depending on where you are. So you'll have Uber, you'll have Lyft, you'll have My Taxi, you'll have Curb, and any number of different numbers programmed into your phone. Typically, you wouldn't actually care whether someone from Uber picks you up or whether a driver that drives for Lyft. And often, actually, drivers drive for both. So why are there so many apps? And these are just the big ones. So these are all different apps that you will actually have to use depending on where you are. So why are there so many apps? Because it's very difficult for any company to actually make another company switch onto a mutual system. So for instance, say Uber said, okay, so obviously our users don't care whether a driver from us or from our competitor, MyTaxi, picks them up. So we will just join forces. We will have a joint platform, and the platform will just find the closest driver to you. So why would that not happen? Because Lyft would never join Uber's platform, because they would be saying, well, we're not giving up our own infrastructure. Uber can do whatever they want on their platform. So they can change the rules. They can, for instance, they could say it all starts off as a level playing field, but we could change the rules. We could just increase prices arbitrarily for people who are not us. So for a curb driver or for a Lyft driver on this app, you would actually have to pay more, for instance, or they would only ever send drivers from other platforms or from other competitors. If there was no one even in the vicinity for Uber, they wouldn't automatically pick the closest person. So this would never happen. So basically, Lyft would never actually give up their own infrastructure to join Uber's infrastructure. And neither would all of these little guys. So why would a platform actually help? So if you actually had a platform that didn't actually belong to anyone, and where everyone actually knew the rules of being on that platform and how much it actually costs to advertise on that platform, then that would significantly lower the barrier to entry, both for the big players, but also for the small players. So the thing is, why are taxi drivers on these apps anyways? So why would you actually drive for Uber if you can drive for yourself? And Uber takes a 20% cut. There are three things. So first of all, there's a reasonable amount of drivers. So if you open the app, you actually don't just get one guy. You get, depending on where you are, you get a lot of people. Secondly, it's a reputation thing. So you know that the people who are on Uber, they are screened in some way. And the third thing, it's an accountability thing. So if something goes wrong, you know whom to call, and you know that that person won't disappear because it's a company and they have a customer support helpline. So these things can be hard-coded into platforms, even allowing single drivers to join the platform by themselves without actually having to go through an intermediary. OK, so this is a very general idea of why platforms on blockchains work extremely well. Because they actually put people on the same level, on a level playing field. So I'm going to talk about a very specific example, namely information markets. They're also known as prediction markets. And what does that mean? So basically, prediction markets make the outcomes of future events tradable. So you can trade on. So for instance, you can trade on whether the Berlin airport is going to open this year, yes or no. And then the price of that outcome reflects the probability. So basically, if the price of the Berlin airport opening this year is 0.01, the general public sees that there's 1% chance that this will actually happen. It's not, we all know the story of the Berlin airport, so it's never actually going to happen. So what a prediction market actually requires is an unambiguous, publicly known event. Then you actually have to give the outcomes that are possible outcomes to this event. You have to be very careful to actually cover all outcomes. So for instance, if I were to ask, is the Berlin airport actually going to open? You could say the outcomes that are possible are yes and no, but then you need to specify how those two are delineated. So for instance, say the new airport has 3 terminals and 2 open. Does this constitute an opening, yes or no? So you have to be very careful to actually cover the entire possibility space. Then you need to tell the smart contract where to actually look this up. So because the smart contract on the blockchain won't know what happens, so you need a so-called oracle. So you could tell it to go to some news site and look this up, or you could feed it the information in another way. And then in order to participate in the prediction market or the information market, you actually need to put up a collateral token, say, for instance, $1 US. So how does this work? So essentially, there are 3 stages of the prediction market. So for instance, here the question is, will the New York L train reopen under the East River by July 2020? So short backstory to this. There was a Hurricane Sandy in 2012 that wreaked havoc over New York. For instance, also flooding the tunnel of the L train under the East River between Brooklyn and Manhattan. So this actually corroded the tracks and part of the infrastructure. And while it didn't actually have to close down right away, it was a given that it was going to have to close down at some point, and it's now actually closed down. And it's being currently renovated. So this actually has a lot of economic interest for a lot of people. So for instance, if you have a house by one of the L train stops and you want to sell it, obviously, it'll sell a lot better if there's a general expectation that the subway is going to reopen next year. Or say you're going to open a restaurant, or you provide services to the people who otherwise would ride the L train. So for instance, you have a bus service that takes commuters from Brooklyn into Manhattan and back. So you actually have a very legitimate stake in this question. So the answer is worth something to you. So what would happen is an interested party would say, I really want to know what people think. I really want to know what the forecast for this, what a good number is. So they would create the market and seed fund this with an amount of money that's up for grabs for the people participating. And then the experts or AIs or data providers, or really anyone, can participate in the market. So for instance, there could be different people who actually know about the progress, so people who live close to the building site, the construction site, people who have some inside knowledge on things going on in the construction, or they know that the plans are going to change, or they know that something has broken and it's not that easy to fix. So that information, because they have a direct incentive to actually trade that market, that information would be priced into the forecast that actually reflects the probability of this happening, yes or no, more or less immediately, because they have a direct economic incentive to do so. So what then happens in the end? So basically, this would be resolved in July 2020, and it would be specified in the contract where the smart contract actually has to look this up. So for instance, we say the event oracle for this is, say, the New York Times, or Bloomberg, or the BBC, whatever the person who actually started the prediction market wants the oracle to be. And then the outcome tokens become worth 0 or 1, respectively, depending on what the factual outcome actually is. And here in the graph, you can actually see how you can trade these outcome tokens at any time. So you don't just need to buy them at some point and at some price and hold on to them. You can sell them and buy them. It's a lot like trading a stock market, but for information. So if you have good information and you feed it into the market, and then people come people come to the same conclusion and the price moves to that where you actually saw it, you can sell your token and realize your gain. Okay. So how does this work in principle? So basically, the way it works is you put in a collateral token. So typically, this application is built on the Ethereum chain. So this would be some fraction of an Ether. But any other compatible token, we call them ERC20 tokens, would also work. So that would actually buy you a complete set, and then you would sell the tokens that you do not want to hold on to. In fact, the interface actually does that for you, so you just have to specify which outcome token you want to buy at which price. And it's important to stress that you can always exchange a full set of outcome tokens back for your collateral token, so you can actually exit the market at any time should you wish. Okay, so basically, I'll give you another example. Say, for instance, you are a shipping company, and you want to ship goods from Hamburg to Shanghai. You have the choice of actually going through the Suez Canal, so through the Mediterranean, and then through the Suez Canal, around Arabia and India, and then all the way to Shanghai. That's 20,000 kilometers. It sets you back 48 days. If you're really lucky, and the Northeast Passage, so that's basically the water street north of Russia, is not iced over, which usually happens between October and July, you could also ship goods north of Russia. So that will only be a journey of 14,000 kilometers. It will only take 35 days. The thing is, this is a little bit unforeseeable for lay people. So whether this street is actually open for ship traffic or not depends on A, what kind of ship you have, and B, whom you ask. So, and if you err, so if you're actually mistaken and you get caught in that street, and best case you can turn around, worst case you actually get closed into the ice, and a Russian military icebreaker will actually have to come get you. That'll be very costly, so you do not want to be mistaken on this. So you have a very real economic interest in knowing whether this passageway is going to be open at a certain point. So what you will do is you will have a prediction market saying, so the 1st of September, this will be passageable. And then anyone who actually has good information on this can participate in the market. So for this particular market, those would be people like Arctic scientists, meteorologists specializing on ice formation, local fishermen, local weather stations, the military, satellite data, AIs, or even the shipping companies who send ships through that route a couple of days ahead of you. So all of those would actually have good information that would give them an incentive to trade this market. What shipping companies typically do is they have experts. So they actually ask experts for a memo on this. This is costly. So clearly, shipping companies are willing to actually spend money on obtaining this sort of information. So why would you want to do this on the blockchain, I hear you say? And that's a very valid question. So the cool thing about the blockchain is, as I told you, the platform. So the platform model where you can actually have several people doing very similar things with each other without actually having to trust each other, because the rules are set in stone. So basically, what would happen in this instance, so basically there would be several different prediction market applications that would run on this platform. So for instance, you have different applications for naval routes. You have one interface for weather forecasting, or something for flight delay insurance, or things that a derivative trader would call complex derivatives, so like So predictions on the weather, for instance, very relevant if you're a farmer and you need to decide on when to bring in your harvest. So, and these different applications would actually tap into the global liquidity pool. So basically, people who want to participate in some sort of prediction on one interface would be matched automatically with people on a different interface who are placing a prediction on the same event. So the examples that are given here are, will the average temperature at the North Pole be 0 degrees in August? That's relevant for naval routes. It's also relevant for weather forecasting. Okay. So basically, so you have the global liquidity pool, which is one of the benefits of building on blockchains. You also know that your funds are secure because they are not actually held by any provider where you actually need to trust the provider. They're held directly on the blockchain in a smart contract that automatically pays out. The only person you need to trust in this scenario is the Oracle. So the Oracle companies, say the BBC or Bloomberg, you would actually have to trust them. Other than that, it's completely trustless. It also gives you autonomy over your own funds. So you can always sell your stake and get your funds back, and no one else is able to access them, so no one can take them away from you. There are also no intermediaries here who are taking a cut. So because the people are matched directly with other people on the blockchain, and it is truly decentralized. Cool. So I hope. So basically, this is a very specific example of why blockchains will bring platforms a big step forward and will make it much more attractive for competitors to actually work together on certain things. So basically, if we had a platform for information markets, we could also have a platform for ride sharing or say social media or anything where you don't actually have to decide on one don't have to decide on one company and stick with them, but where you can actually be on a platform that actually connects you with all other people who are kind of doing the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inspiring us. Thanks a lot. Do we have any questions from the audience? I'm sure you have some questions going around in your head, and if you want to reflect a little bit more, you're probably going to be around to answer questions later.
Yes, sure, absolutely.
As well. Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
And big round of applause, please.